Welcome to the Night's Open Circuit, the IEEE UCF official podcast. I'm your host, Antonia Jimenez.
And I'm Julia Lampert. In today's episode, we have Alex Parady. He is a current undergrad UCF student in electrical engineering with a minor in computer science. Welcome to our podcast, Alex. We're very excited that you're here with us today.
It's a pleasure to be here, guys. Thanks for having me.
For the people that don't know Alex, he's better known as Parady or the CEO of IEEE. He was IEEE UCF's president for 2 consecutive years, and today he's here to tell us more about his career path and what are his plans after graduation.
So, Alex, tell us a little bit about you. Where are you from? And what made you choose electrical engineering and all that fun stuff?
Oh, well, we could fill the whole podcast with just this. First topic will take the whole time. Yeah, so I guess basic background stuff. I'm from Fort Lauderdale. I honestly think that's impacted my life a lot. South Florida is quite a fun place to grow up. A lot of diversity down there, and a lot of lessons learned even while just in high school and whatnot. So that was a lot of fun. Why I chose electrical engineering? Yeah, I didn't even think I was gonna be asked that, but that's I guess that's a pretty baseline question. Initially, what got me into engineering, I actually was going to do a business degree for a while. That was what I was pretty set on, was undergrad in business and then going to law school. In retrospect, I'm very glad I didn't do that. But basically, what had shifted me to change paths was is actually the first Falcon Heavy launch that happened. So that was when they had SpaceX launched their 3 boosters, three Falcon 9 rockets, and then Elon launched his Red Roadster into space with Starman in it, and they did a loop around Mars. And I was just watching that in the gym at my high school, and just kind of messing around. And I'm watching the live stream. I'm like, wow, this is really awesome. I really enjoy this. I want to be able to do something that can impact others the way that this is currently impacting me, even though it's happening I mean, in that case, it's 300 miles away. For some people, they're all the way around the world, and they're able to see that and be impacted by that. And I kind of saw that and was like, this would be really cool to do something along these lines. Even if it's not necessarily in space, whatever it is that I can do that just supports others and, possibly has positive impacts. And then what specifically drove me to electrical engineering, I had a family friend at the time who eventually became my boss for a period of time at NEI, Josh, he was working on electrical projects, working on solar fields, and I kind of saw these schematics. I was like, oh, these look like fun puzzles. This will be really fun. Little did I know that it's way more complicated than that, but that was kind of what was the initial kindle that had me kind of going towards electrical.
Cool. And what about your minor in computer science?
Yeah, so I think that kind of dives into a bigger topic for me of diversity of things that I like to do. I mean, that's really probably one of the biggest things about me, and kind of what I recommend to so many people is do many things, kind of find what you find most suitable for yourself. Currently right now, I've honestly done a bunch in industry, and I've kind of toyed around in hardware, software, and kind of even pulling towards project management at this point, which we talk about a little bit later as well. But yeah, initially I was kind of seeing computer science is something that's very valuable. Obviously, there's a lot of opportunities in that industry. And I saw that it kind of makes an electrical engineer kind of self-sufficient. You kind of learn the basics of mechanical engineering by yourself. Electrical is really the hardest, to be honest. It's very diverse in its field. It's signal analysis. You have electronics, power systems. There's so many different subways you can go, and doing that major I think is very valuable. And then having the CS side, a little bit of bolstering kind of my skills in that, I thought was really valuable.
Cool.
So you talked about working on NEI. What other places have you worked on, and is there a favorite place? And also what project you worked on while working there?
Sure, yeah. I mean, that's a great question to ask. So I've worked at NEI was my first job that I had outside of university. I guess at this point, including university, I've had plenty of jobs. I've started off my actual first career job at all was 3 jobs at once here. It was working in the microgravity lab here, yeah, with Andrew, yeah, and secondly was doing SARC, so I was a tutor, and also I was doing campus tours on the side with one of my mentors from back south. He was doing campus tours for our high school. So I was doing all 3 of those. That was actually when the pandemic kind of started, which I can get into a little bit more about that in IEEE as well. But that kind of set me on my path. And then that summer, I started working on at NEI, and then worked that whole year remotely after that when I came back to Florida. Was very lucky to actually do that. I actually was able to work in Denver that summer, which was kind of pretty unique. Like people were kind of getting screwed over with jobs that summer.
Yeah.
Weren't really able to go to many of those. I mean, people that were more qualified than me were just getting rejected from offers that they had at that time, which looking back is like kind of crazy. It's very like interesting to see that in retrospect, but it was a great opportunity for me. I took the most out of it. And did that kind of in several ways. And then secondly, the next summer after that, I worked at Tesla. I was working in the service tooling side of that. So I was basically working on tools that kind of service all the vehicles, including like some of the newer models as well. That was a lot of fun. Honestly, that was probably one of the more like eye-opening experiences. Like it gave me a pretty good understanding of like what a big company that kind of has a startup perspective kind of can look like. And frankly, I kind of prefer that to a more like corporate environment. I honestly think the corporate kind of grind set is not really my fit. It is somewhat of like slower pace, and it's a bit more of like you're a cog in the machine rather than like you're making a very impactful impact onto your team and your projects. But yeah, my last most recent experience was with Qualcomm. I was working out there this summer in a software role. And got a lot of experience there as well, and again learned a lot of what I want to do in industry, and places that I kind of or items and subsections that I kind of want to stray from. And then again, additionally, I've also done some like educational roles here at UCF. I've been a TA for multiple classes, and then also I'm currently in a research position as well.
That's great.
Can you talk about like your research position and what you do there?
Sure, yeah. So I can go into that a little bit. I know eventually I want to talk a little bit more about kind of the energy sector at large, but specifically for my research, I'm focusing on cybersecurity for the grid. So for basically power systems, looking at, and this is kind of like a pretty big issue, especially with the like kind of increase of cyber attacks. Kind of earlier in this decade or in the last decade, it was kind of a really big issue. Like in Iran, there was like centrifuges that were being, impacted by integrity attacks, which is basically like sending in false data to cause like, in that case, meltdowns of reactors, but at a larger set, just like catastrophic damage to infrastructure. So we're looking at kind of how can we put in algorithms that will, instead of like being responsive to attacks, can be more retroactive or proactive and be able to put in defenses that will cause it to like, even if we don't know what the attacks are, we can kind of have an idea of how to combat them and be more prepared in the future. It's very fun stuff. I've actually, I've recruited a friend of mine to be kind of on my team for that as well. And it's been a lot of fun kind of building that up and doing a lot of work in that regard.
Cool. And then can you talk a little bit about the energy sector and just like that in general? What you do with it?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I definitely have been having like some more hot takes on this recently. I kind of think this is kind of like the unsung topic of our generation, honestly, which, and it's kind of like been frustrating for me because I've kind of like been strained away from actually working in the industry in large part because of this. In two regards. I think nuclear is kind of like the biggest thing that like frustrates me in multiple different ways. First off, on the nuclear energy side, I think it is kind of something that's like strayed away from in the power industry, which does frankly frustrate me. I think it's probably one of the biggest keys to sustainable renewable energy. It doesn't really have carbon emissions. I guess it's not renewable, but it doesn't have carbon emissions. It's very efficient, and besides a few disasters that have happened, which notably those are not good. Like no one wants those to happen. No one wants a Chernobyl or a Fukushima to happen in their backyard. But it is frustrating to see the massive shift away. I think it's in large part what's causing this energy crisis currently in Europe. Basically, prices are going up so much there, and so many of the countries have decommissioned nuclear plants. It's really unfortunate to see that, and I think it's really bad in that regard. And then on the second half of this kind of like nuclear side of things, I mean, I think in large part we kind of have been, the machine of, countries have kind of been ignoring the fact that we're mildly on the brink of like a nuclear war. But I think it's kind of like not really ideal. And I think it's a disservice for us to kind of like not talk about it, to be honest. Possibly in like a month, this will be like a dated conversation and maybe like it's not really an issue, but I think currently I think it's a really big thing that is something to be of concern of and be again more transparent on. I think on both regards, it's important to on nuclear energy be more transparent on what the benefits are and what the realistic negatives are, and same with nuclear warfare. It's like it's not absolutely off the table. It should be kind of more discussed in the common sphere of dialogue, unfortunately. But and then I kind of on a additional regard, and if you have any more questions on it, we can discuss. But in the energy sector at large, I do think it has probably one of the bigger openings and where there'll be a ton of jobs in the future. Clearly, with EVs, the current infrastructure that's in place for the energy sector is really insufficient, honestly. Mainly the distribution kind of in both ways of like generation and in distribution to like EVs is going to be a big issue. Is kind of the infrastructure is really not in place for it. Not enough power can really be sent down to houses or from generation sites to the primary locations of the grid. And there's going to be so many jobs to be retrofitting those parts of the grid and adding these new generation sites. I mean, I do know this from what my boss at NEI continues to do. There's so many renewable jobs. There's so many transmission jobs that are on the market. And, if that's a field that people are interested in, if people are mainly looking for how can they easily impact, the world in a very meaningful way and one that will get you a substantial job. I mean, the power industry is really a great option in that space.
Yeah, I am on the power and renewable energy track, so I definitely get that. And I worked with the nuclear navy this summer.
Oh, sick.
So trust me, I get everything that you're saying.
How was that experience?
It was really interesting. Definitely slow because it's corporate. I like fast-paced things, but it was really cool to learn about nuclear energy and work in labs with simulations and actually see a nuclear sub and nuclear aircraft carrier.
That is really cool.
I worked on the CVN 79 and on, so the Ford class carriers, which is pretty cool.
I don't know too much about the carriers, but it does sound pretty cool though. I mean, I do find that concept really cool about how most of those ships can like not port for like months and be fine.
Yeah, it's literally insane. They were telling us about it. It's crazy.
Yeah.
They just have to port for food.
Yeah, basically, yeah.
And that's it. Yeah.
It's very cool stuff. I mean, I think I've heard similar kind of like perspectives, and like I know some people have, I don't know if this is actually like true, if it's just like been told through so many people that it gets kind of strayed, but like people working on like as engineers on the subs for like so long, and like they're just like on the subs forever, and they're like, oh.
Yeah, they try not to stay like super long on the subs because even when I was on the sub, listen, I'm 5 feet tall. I was hitting my head on things, and that's insane. And I was tripping over everything. Like, I don't understand how people live on that. For real. Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, for sure. Also, not seeing the sun for a while. I mean, even just with like winters, I've been kind of considering this more. I'm like, damn, I can't see the sun for like most of the day. Like, it sucks. But like being underwater most of the time definitely is not a great option either.
Yeah, it's definitely claustrophobic.
For sure. Yeah.
So you talked about the energy industry, and well, this year you left IEEE UCF's board, but you're still involved in leading the Superstate Racer project. So can you share with us what is it about and what are some of the challenges that you faced doing that project?
For sure, yeah. I mean, it's definitely, it's probably one of the projects I've been like the most involved in and the most interested in, and was kind of like been a good driving force for me. I guess for context, when I was president, I was leading a lot of the projects and in their initial phases. Phantom Arms, which is our like telerobotic project, our chess project, Nitros Gambit. I was kind of leading those and starting a lot of our projects off back then. This has been the main one that I've kind of stayed with a lot. It was energy storage used to be kind of like my biggest driving force for what I wanted to do in industry. I wanted to like go into more experimental like energy storage systems, like flow batteries and other types of forms for grid storage. I've kind of strayed from that at this point, but basically what the Superstate Racer is it's supposed to be a hybrid energy storage system. So basically that's a mixture of ultracapacitors and batteries, and we're looking to see, does this combination make more efficient vehicles, and does it also alleviate the drain on your batteries? So in large part, batteries, after they get cycled through a lot, do degrade in their storage capacity. And that's in large part from massive current draws, especially in EVs. So we're seeing if there's like a benefit to that in our car. We actually yesterday were able to put together the full battery loop to the motors. So and got that all working. Yeah, it was pretty cool stuff. Yeah, and so we've been making really good progress. I will be like upfront, and I think this is true with a lot of these projects, and I would imagine it's pretty universal, especially in university, when so many students are learning like what is the way to go about these projects. The initial phases were really tough. We didn't really have concrete project ideas. Honestly, the project started as a joke between me and a friend. Like I was just like, "What if we do this?" And he was like, "That sounds cool." And then like finding out what we actually want to do and put in like parts of our scope, and everyone there is just volunteering. Like nobody's getting paid for these, obviously. So it's kind of difficult to get everybody in line and have a succinct idea and a succinct movement. But after that first semester and into this last spring and now into fall, we've been really running with it, and it's been really fun to see. I'm looking forward to actually having the go-kart actually move, and then hopefully when I'm out of here, we can get a more industry grade version of the car. I think that would be really cool to see, and possibly it could actually impact the automotive industry, and that would really be my biggest goal to see it in the long term.
Yeah, that would be great. How long have you been working on this project or this project for?
Yeah, so we started building out the team in like summer of 21. I remember I was literally driving out to California and was hopping in. Like we initially wanted to go some route of being like exclusive with the project and being like, oh, we were going to recruit a team for it. And then we realized like that's not a great idea. Like I think SAE does that for their stuff. They have a more like exclusive kind of environment for it. And you know what, that's really kind of contrary to what our kind of motto really is within IEEE. It's always kind of like we want to be inclusive. We want to have as many opportunities for people as possible. So after that summer, and especially during that initial phase where it was very challenging, and that was kind of where we saw the most drop off in people. After that period, we opened it up to everybody, and it's been really cool to see. So it's been almost like a year and a half at this point. I'm hoping it'll be done by this semester because I'm going to be a little bit less involved kind of just in the university in general in spring. But, regardless if it's done, if it has more to go, I'll still be able to assist in whatever way I can, and it will still be pretty successful. There's definitely new people that are interested in kind of taking over the reins.
Cool. Do you have any like sub teams for it?
Yeah, so I mean that's obviously a pretty important part of IEEE projects in general, and we've kind of like run with that with many of them. We have like a electrical team, mechanical team, software team, and then also a controls team. Shout out to Julian. That man's been killing it. He's honestly super intelligent on power electronics. And frankly, like my approach initially to design was way more simplistic, and having his knowledge, it has been really valuable. He's honestly kind of a crazy kid. Like when I first met him when he was a freshman and I was like in my first stint as president, I met him and I was like, wow, this kid's super smart for like his first month in university. Like he knows so much already. And I guess that kind of goes to a larger point. There's really, you can really learn so much outside of just like school. I really think it's important to do that, whether it's through, projects that you do like this car or, whatever it may be. It's important to kind of like teach yourself some skills. It doesn't need to be like everything about power electronics, but if you have valuable skills, like that's a good starting point. I think we're going to talk about that a little bit later as well, but I think that's a really good way to just get more experience. Classes really aren't everything, honestly. Like these employers are looking for certain skills. Obviously they are looking for classes kind of as like something to check off a box, but if you have like very meaningful quantitative impact on something that's really cool, like EVs and then like hybrid EVs, like that's pretty dope. That's kind of like a big thing we've set out to do in IEEE is like these ambitious projects that like you could show on a resume and people are going to be like, wow, that's fucking cool. Like we love that.
And so did you recruit people for it or did people just want to join?
Yeah, that's a good question. I mean, we initially, I guess we did like initially recruit. At this point, it's kind of just like, well, we have our core team. If anybody wants to come, like you're welcome to join. I will say, I think people do find it more difficult to join a project when it's like so far close to being done. But I don't know. I think if you're really interested in it, like there's always stuff that needs to be done. Again, we're always looking for volunteers, really. Like, again, we're not paying anybody, so it's like if people are willing to work, like I'm obviously gonna be like, yeah, come on, let's do stuff. but at this point, it's just like, I mean, we don't really recruit it for many things. We kind of are just like, here's when stuff's happening. Come to this. Like, it'll be fun.
Cool.
I post a lot of memes about stuff too, so that helps too.
Yeah. So you talked about the places that you like did your internship in. What projects did you work on, and what did you learn about them or the industry?
Yeah, I mean, these are good questions too. I think, to be honest, NEI is probably where I had like the most like meaningful projects. So I was like designing very integral parts of communication systems and like actual distribution systems for power systems. So that included like, from the ground up solar fields we were designing. Most notably, we did 2 in Honduras that were pretty cool. Like we built out like the full design of these solar fields and how they were going to get distributed to the grid. We did a lot in Texas. I think a few in Hawaii as well. That was really cool. And then after I worked there, or I think it was before I went to Hawaii, and then I was like, oh, I get to work on projects that are on these islands. Like, this is awesome. So that was really cool. I really learned a lot there. I mean, that was my first real industry experience. I remember the first week I was just like, I'm going to just learn AutoCAD because that's what I'm going to be doing this whole time. And AutoCAD was honestly incredibly clutch the whole time there. Probably one of my favorite 2D CAD softwares. Love the command line for that. So yeah, that was really fun. I think, at the time it was one of the things that when I was in electrical engineering is like, I want to do this specifically. So it really was a good time to do that. And then I kind of did want to kind of straight out and do more diverse things, kind of find what path I wanted to pursue. At Tesla, I was working, pretty diverse tasks. I even did some mechanical work as well, like mechanical design. I remember I did the opposite of what I did at NEI, where I learned CAD like very late, and I was just like, what if I just try to like mess around and like learn it by trial and error? Not a good idea. I feel like it's way better to like, your first week do like a LinkedIn learning course for like 3 days and then be like chilling the rest of the time you're there. I remember I didn't do that, and then like the last like 3 weeks I like briefly speed ran one, and I was like, oh dude, now I know how to do all of this, like, which that kind of sucked, but yeah, it was really cool though. I got to work on a lot of the different cars. Some of the newer ones that are still kind of like in development, but it was really cool to see some of those newer ones. I got to go to Giga Nevada as well, which is the I think at the time was maybe one of the biggest factories in the world. Giga Texas is like, I think 4 times as large at this point. That was pretty epic. I think one of the biggest impacts from Tesla that I had was that I really got to work with everybody. I was working with technicians and factory workers on one end, then kind of middle of the road engineers, which is where I was. And then also, software engineers and people in the headquarters in Palo Alto. I really saw kind of all the different perspectives. And, I feel like that is valuable. It's important to kind of see like, how do people kind of live their life, and how should you put that into perspective for how you should go about yours? I think it did give me a lot of experience in that regard, because, I mean, the factory working stuff is like very challenging, but in any kind of aspect, I think honestly what Tesla's doing to kind of automate those roles is probably pretty valuable. I honestly think factory work is kind of mildly in the inhumane kind of aspect of things. And it's interesting to see, the people that are kind of just getting by doing those jobs and driving like hours to get to work each day, and then the people that are kind of on the software side that are, incontent with their current state and are always looking for more. And it's kind of interesting to see that dichotomy, even just within the same company, within the same general region. I found that very interesting. And then I guess finally with Qualcomm, so I was doing software development for one of their projects that was like an audio recognition software on their Snapdragon chips. I was working in the government branch of Qualcomm, so that part was kind of interesting. Like, to be honest, I frankly am not the biggest fan of government contracting. I honestly find like a lot of what the government funds kind of like is waste. Like, it's a lot of wasted money, whether it's the military or whatever. But I still found the experience kind of valuable. Again, the corporate aspect of things was not necessarily my favorite, but I actually had like a pretty fun team and a lot of great interns with me, and probably the better intern experience that I had, honestly. And yeah, I was doing a lot of stuff with proprietary kind of software there, and like digital signal processing and items like that, which it was fun. It was very diverse, honestly. I learned how to be a little bit better with software in general, and then also with some of these more niche signal processing items.
How is Tesla with like the working environment?
Yes, so people do have a lot of like hot takes on this for sure. I always kind of tell people, like, from my experience, I had a really good one, honestly. I think it was partially because my team was not on like a mission critical path that, like, you know, if service tools aren't made, like, it is going to slow down things, it is going to cause backlogs, it is going to cause loss in revenue. But frankly, what kind of matters more for Tesla's bottom line is like design specs for their vehicles. I was not working on those. I was kind of using that information to then make tools for them. So our deadlines were pretty kind of based on other teams. It was not necessarily like, I didn't feel overworked at any time. There were times where I was like, maybe I should work a little bit more, and they're like, 40 hours is like fine. Like, you don't need to do overtime unless you like really need it. But I did also know other people that were working on more like kind of critical projects. I knew one kid that was working on the semi truck that was like working like 60-hour days. He was telling me like during winter, like he would get to the factory, or sorry, to the headquarters, go in the basement, and then leave when the sun was down again, so didn't see the sun all day. And I was like, oh, that doesn't sound as fun. That sounds a little bit like not a great experience. But I've kind of heard like kind of the full gamut. I mean, honestly, a lot of people do kind of have hot takes on Tesla. I frankly do kind of like that environment more. It's very fast paced. It's very much like you are doing real work. So I do value that. And also I find it very interesting how many different kind of industries that they are in. It's really not an automotive company. It's way more of like a technology company.
Yeah.
All right, well, I'm gonna kind of do a backtrack and talk about
Let's go.
like UCF and being a senior in like your last year or however long you have left, because seniors don't always end with their first senior year, Everyone knows that, especially in engineering. But I kind of wanted to I kind of wanted to talk about like your senior project, like senior design, and like how you kind of came up with it, and also how you integrate it into your like class schedule too.
Sure. So I'll just start off by like, stuff about kind of like where I'm at right now. I mean, it's honestly kind of a decent shift from the last few years. And I would like to talk maybe at some point a little bit more about like the past IEEE things too. But really, when I was involved in IEEE as president, I was a very much like workaholic. Like I still kind of do this occasionally, but I'm a little bit more balanced. But like, we'll put in like 12-hour days. At times, I was like literally not going to bed. That was like the latter half of last semester. But
Yeah, we saw in the Discord.
yes. Yeah. If you go back to timestamps from like April 2022, not good. But I was very much kind of like in the zone of like, I want to do all these different things, and this is the time that's going to be required, so I'm going to like facilitate that. But at this point, I've kind of been more of like, this is my last year. I still want to be ambitious, still do a lot of things, but kind of have a little bit better work-life balance. I think I've been doing decent at that at this point. I've actually been traveling around a lot, which has been nice. I went to New York City last month and just got back from Boston and Maine to see the fall leaves, which that was really nice. I think it's honestly, it's given me good perspective on what I want to do after university, and where I might want to end up, which I think a lot of people should do. I kind of also would like to talk about that at some point too, but I think a lot of people kind of graduate and they kind of don't know what to do with their lives after college. And it's a mixed bag. College has a lot of opportunities and a lot of places where you can grow, but also life shouldn't end once you get that degree. It really should be kind of like you take those lessons and apply them outside of university. I've been kind of learning a lot from that, seeing my fellow peers that have already graduated. For clarity, I'm definitely a fifth year at this point. But I've seen a lot of my friends that, grew up with me in high school and kind of like where they've ended up, what their opinions are. And that's helped me kind of shape a lot of what I want to do at this point when I graduate. But yeah, so kind of that aside, with senior design, so our project has been a blind assist pool table. So basically, we've been looking to design a pool apparatus and a user apparatus. It's actually a team of 8 people. It's 2 separate teams. I'm working primarily on the table side. We are working to have it so that like a blind person can actually go up there, or somebody who's visually impaired, can't see properly, can go up to the table and use audio guidance as well as that user apparatus to be able to play billiards. It's kind of like a very niche thing, but we do think that like, something like that could be a cool first prototype, or maybe something that's, more useful in the future, maybe in some more advanced kind of visually impaired assistive technology. It's been really cool to kind of see it come along. I've been primarily working on like the guidance system for it. It's like a set of speakers right now. Dr. Chan's been kind of pushing me to make it a little bit more advanced. So it's been a lot of fun. Some other stuff too that I think is like good advice in general. We've been working on this project actually since January of this year. So we've actually been working on it for 10 months at this point, and we're only in Senior Design 1. I honestly, frankly, think that it's a disservice to start in Senior Design 1. It's very difficult to kind of get everything in place for it. Like, I mean, they make you kind of come up with a full project and scope in like 4 weeks. Like, that's not realistically enough time unless you're putting all of your time into that. So we got the team together and worked with Dr. Chan for a good amount of time prior to the class. And at this point, we're pretty well into design. We're actually even, testing equipment and putting a lot of things together. So it's been really cool to see that. I think it's also helping with, I don't remember who said it, but in regard to kind of workload with classes, getting ahead on this class is really important. I mean, I remember when I was doing these all-nighters last year for my thesis, people were with me side by side doing it for senior design. So it's like getting that like kind of like, fluff paper out of the way is really valuable. Nobody in industry wants a 120-page paper on a project. It's mainly kind of just a constraint that they apply to have like some universal standard of success. So if you can get ahead on that, I think it's really good. And then, you can actually do a more impactful project realistically.
That is a long paper.
Agreed. We've ironically already gone into so we're at like 120, and then we realized that our margins were too small, or
oh my god.
So yeah, we made them bigger, and it got to like 130 pages already. And Dr. Chan was like, yeah, because I was like kind of behind. I was like 10 pages behind everybody else, and everybody else was kind of done. And he was like, you owe everybody else dinner. And I'm like, yes, I think I do. So at some point I need to go get them some dengetsu or something.
Yeah. You said that it's 2 senior design groups working on the one project. So what, do you guys meet often? Like, what is that kind of like?
Yes, that's a very good question. And I don't necessarily recommend that people do that all the time, but when we were forming our team last year, we had like 5 people, and we were like, well, why don't we just build 2 different teams? So we were kind of like planning to do something that possibly could be divided into 2 subsections. I believe the class itself is very much like they recommend you don't do that. They don't want one team to be contingent on another. So you have to be pretty modular in that aspect. Basically, like, all of your stuff can work realistically without everything that they have. But yeah, we've been pretty good with it so far. We basically meet as a full team every 2 weeks, and then kind of, individual teams we meet kind of twice a week. It's been really fun to work on it, honestly. I'm kind of like getting my PCB skills back in order for it. But yeah, it's been a good time. I do recommend that, if for like the younger audience out there, if they can kind of get together what they think they want to do and get a team together, reaching out to a professor that's ambitious enough to kind of guide them in those early stages. Because again, realistically, you want this project to be cool. You want it to be something that these people from industry, the recruiters, see, and they're like, wow, that's pretty unique. That's pretty cool. It's pretty impactful. And here's the skills they did for it. And you don't want it to just be something that's checking a box. I mean, that realistically doesn't really serve a purpose. Like, the degree is cool, but you want it to be a showcase of your actual skills and what your potential is for industry realistically.
Mm-hmm. And so I know that electrical engineering majors specifically have to take junior design. Were you thinking of this project while you were taking that class?
No. I took that class like a very long time ago. Oh. I think I took it maybe spring 21 or fall 22, okay. or fall 20, like 2020. Honestly, like, was not in my mind at all. My CS minor and thesis added a semester each, so I was kind of like, senior design is far away. It's a cool class. I did it fully remote, so it wasn't really as valuable, I think. But, it goes through cool things. It's really not too big of a hassle. So I kind of always say, like, don't worry about this class too much. It's not really too big of a deal. But I understand why it's there. It's to kind of teach people, how do you do a PCB? Like, what is this? I kind of forgot most of that stuff, honestly. I kind of know the baseline stuff, but practical, I need to kind of still brush up my skills.
Yeah.
So you talked about what to do after like graduation. So tell us more about what are your thoughts on that, and yeah, will they be like more geared towards academia or like industry?
This is actually okay. So that's actually an interesting point. I used to think I wanted to get a PhD because I was like, oh man, I don't know. I think my idea in two regards was one, I love university and academia. I love being here. Um, I kind of think I've strayed from that because of how long I've been here. Really, when I got back here from San Diego, I was like just looking around at Chipotle, and I'm like, yeah, I really don't belong here. I really need to graduate. So I think a stint away from academia is very much what I am in need of. I do love being in college, and I think it's in regard to kind of like what the differences are. This is a place where you can do so many different things. Like you don't need to be only doing one job. You could literally, I mean, again, I was doing 3 jobs at one point. I've done like so many things in parallel, and I feel like that is the most exciting thing, honestly. Like that is what I love a lot, is doing like a bunch of different things and being good at all of them, to an extent that you don't get overwhelmed and you suck at everything. Like that's not really good. You don't want to have that. um but this is a really great time for students. Like you can do so much with the internet. There's so many opportunities, honestly, and I find that very valuable. But yeah, in regard to industry, I mean, I think my plans are probably to do one more internship and possibly in project management, and then kind of see what I want to do after that. Maybe even take like a decent break to go travel a little bit further. I've been really kind of getting that bug at this point to keep traveling, which I do think is a lot of fun. And it's kind of been guiding me in interesting directions. But I do think that I want to kind of do what I've done here with IEEE, and this is kind of what my idea was like make IEEE a mock startup, like do things that are like startup adjacent, and kind of use that as something that I could then maybe apply in industry. If it's not necessarily me starting a company from scratch, which I don't want to do that for just like the sake of doing it. Maybe if there's like a problem I see in the future that I want to solve or have an impact in, I will try to do a startup for that. But I see myself probably going in and being an important part of some company that's doing some interesting things. That is really what my goal is at this point.
Do you have a company in a specific that you will want to work for as a full time?
Yeah, there's definitely a few that I'm interested in. Honestly, like to be frank, I think Neuralink is like one of the most interesting technologies that's like cutting edge right now. That would be someplace I would love to kind of get my foot in the door. It's kind of, I mean, it is like an Elon company, so it kind of has a similar vibe, and it is way more of a startup. I think it has 200 employees instead of like I don't even know how many Tesla has. It's probably, I think it's in the thousands, or maybe in the 10,000s. So it would be way more of a kind of niche kind of subsection there. They don't have a viable product for like commercial use at this point too. So they don't really have, besides like, again, Elon's kind of like money he's putting into that, or the investors' money. There's not too much funds to be spent there, so it's definitely hard to kind of get your foot in the door of a company like that. But I mean, that's really what's really cool, though. I mean, the frontier of new technology and getting to work on real problems that can solve things for people. I think for me personally, the reason I'm really interested in it is that their initial kind of phase for Neuralink is to be used in humans for giving neurological use back to people that are paraplegics or have neurological damage to their bodies. My mom suffers from a neurological illness, and it's kind of been something that I'm like, you know what, even if it's not me helping her directly, if it's like, a product that comes out 10 years from now, at least I can help somebody else who has these issues and possibly be able to make an impact to them and make their lives better. Again, it kind of goes back to what I was saying before. I want to do stuff that can impact people, that it's not just me or people that I know, it's people that are like, 10 steps away from me that I will never meet, but that I know can have a positive impact on. Like, that's what I want to be a part of. 100,000? That's how many people? Yeah, they're busting, honestly. They were hiring so much when I was an intern there. I know that, and this has actually kind of been with most companies, they did lay off a lot of people when the interest rates started to rise, and the economy seemed to be heading towards a more negative way. I don't know. I think it's a mixed bag. I kind of understand where the leadership is coming from in laying off a lot of people. I see it as like, there's probably many jobs that people are just kind of like mailing in. They're not really putting their full effort into, but Subsequently, I mean, I'd heard stories where people were getting laid off when they were 2 weeks into their job. Clearly, you don't have a good reading of like what their work impact is at that point. So it's definitely a mixed bag. I think the hiring freezes that many companies have done have kind of negatively impacted people that are my peers. I think I personally will most likely be fine in some regard. I will find some path, but I do frankly worry for a lot of my peers. I think this is not necessarily the best job market to be entering into. These higher interest rates kind of cause companies to not be able to do these expansions that we've been seeing kind of thrown around more or less recently, especially in Silicon Valley. I mean, companies have just been like throwing money around, which has kind of been reckless in my opinion. But I think that, the industry is very diverse. There's many paths that people can take to having kind of like a fulfilling aspect within industry. And, there's a lot of paths that us as individuals can kind of take as well.
Yeah, talking about like the hiring freeze and everything, have you thought about applying or working outside of the US or
Oh, for sure. Well, yeah, I have some contingency plans for possibly working in Europe at some point. Which,
that would be
yeah, I think
awesome.
Europe's very cool. I'm honestly kind of like morally like skewed on this because like it's a great time for Americans to go to Europe, but like Europe is honestly really in a bad time at this point. Like relative to the U.S. dollar, like their currencies are all kind of collapsing. This war in Ukraine is really not helping kind of their future onlooks here. There's a lot of uncertainty in Europe. I mean, it's honestly kind of retrospective of like, I mean, not necessarily saying there's going to be a world war, but it reminds me a lot of like what the environment was right before World War II. It's very much like it seems like there could be some big impacts to the individuals that live in these countries. There possibly might be famines from not being able to export grains. Again, economic collapses similar to like the Great Depression. I'm pretty worried about stuff like that, but I do think there's a lot of opportunities still there. Engineering is great in Europe, especially Germany. Even though they decommission all their nuclear plants, I still think they're one of the cooler companies for that, countries for that. And I also have a lot of family in Greece as well that actually have like hundreds of cousins there. So I need to go back there at some point. I was supposed to go in 2020, so missed that one, but possibly this summer I'll get the chance to go out there and maybe explore some options.
Greece sounds like fun.
Greece is awesome. It's been very long since I've been there, so I'm looking
You've
forward to
been there
that.
before?
Oh yeah. I've last time I was there was I think I was like 12. Unfortunately, I used to be able to speak it a little bit. I could still probably understand it if you talk to me in Greek for like a few hours. I'd probably be able to pick it up very quickly again. It was spoken so much when I was younger around me, so it's still kind of in the back of my head.
That's insane.
Mm.
The only things that I know that are like Greek are, don't hate on me, Mamma Mia. That's in Greece, and my big fat Greek
That's
wedding.
a great one. That one's so accurate, honestly. Like,
Yeah,
that's one of the better ones.
yeah. So we're gonna kind of talk about like your time at UCF through your internships and how you built up your soft skills, your hard skills. And listen, I know when you go into an internship, you kind of don't know exactly like what you need to know. Coming from experience, I had to
Very
learn.
true.
Yeah, I had to learn so much stuff for my first like 3 weeks at like for the nuclear navy, right? And they taught me about nuclear physics because I didn't know anything. So can you give any advice to people on like being professional in that kind of environment and how to ask people for help when learning these things?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a very good perspective. Honestly, I think in all of my jobs, I've had portions where like I've been going in and don't really know how to specifically facilitate those jobs, whether it's in power or hardware or like some specific software. I think you could learn a lot in this time period. Like the internet has so much value in that regard. Like you can go on LinkedIn Learning and like have all these skills. Like UCF offers it for free, which is pretty epic. I am going to miss that, frankly, when I graduate. And then, also like asking mentors for help. I think that's really important. I honestly wish I did that a bit more and was a bit more forceful kind of in my last internship, kind of asking for help, especially because it was software and it's not what I'm really focused on. So that would have been good to do. And I think, students can really do that. I think never be afraid to kind of ask for help because that's that's really how you're going to learn the most, is when people that know what they're doing are able to teach you and kind of show you examples on how to best go about those skills.
How did you go about it?
I mean, yeah, primarily, I kind of saying like LinkedIn Learning was very valuable for that. I mean, AutoCAD and CATIA were the two like main CADing things. I was like, all right, crash course on these. So stuff like that. And then my boss at NEI would always like he was very willing to help. And same with my boss at Tesla and then at Qualcomm or my mentors there were very good at being supportive and kind of showing me the ropes for different things that I was like, I don't really know how to do this. So that was very helpful.
Yeah, because sometimes you just don't know how to do something, and that's okay. They'll teach you. That's the whole point of internships, right?
It's one of the biggest. I mean, I honestly think that is kind of like why internships exist. Is like it's companies' way to basically train you at a lower salary, without having to like if a full time comes in and they are training you up on something, they are burning quite a bit more of cash in that regard. So it kind of makes sense that it's like an investment at a lower pay rate. And then, you have the opportunity to then say, I don't want to work here, but they have the opportunity to then hire you on, and then they don't have to go through that process of training you up anymore, which, it's a pretty good investment for them realistically. So it makes a lot of sense kind of like why that has come about.
Yeah, cool.
So after all of like your experience, what would be an advice that you will give to students?
Right, yeah. So I was thinking about this earlier because I did see you guys were going to ask me this. Lex Friedman actually, like in his podcast, always asks what advice you want to give to younger kids or students that want to kind of be like you, and what is the meaning of life. Ironically, I'm kind of going to like bind the two together here, but I've kind of like come around and had like, throughout the years, like I always kind of have different focuses and different pieces of advice to give students. But I think the four things I kind of find that I've universally kind of held throughout my time here. I think the biggest one is honestly like don't be afraid to fail. I've failed so much in life at this point. I'm doing a bit better at not doing it as much. No one likes to fail. It's never fun to look like an idiot or do something that's stupid. But in reality, it's like it's not necessarily important how people are going to see that failure. It's more important how you can use that to then grow and do better in the future. Again, even with just skills, it's like you're obviously going to fail at stuff when you're first going about learning something new. So I think that's very valuable. I mean, I initially wanted to go to UF, and I used kind of failing from that and coming here to be a better opportunity and kind of like reset my path in university and like what I wanted to do. So, not every door that you are looking for is necessarily going to be the best one. Other ones will be there that maybe are even better. So another one, I think doing stuff that you find meaningful and impactful, I think is very important. I think, again, this kind of goes back to the thing I was saying about people that have graduated and don't feel as fulfilled in industry. Is if you're just going for money, I don't honestly think you're going to find it very fulfilling. You probably will change your path multiple times. And changing path isn't necessarily a bad thing. That's just, again, in that case, you are just finding what works and what doesn't for you. But I think, pursuing something that you are going to find impactful, I think is really important and will give you some form of fulfillment, which I think is really needed, honestly, for humans. And kind of like on a tangent to this, I think focusing on stuff that doesn't matter as much is really like not a good thing to do. Like hyper focus on like gossip or whatever, like workplace environment stuff. Like I always find that really frustrating, frankly. Like I saw a lot of that in high school, and I kind of was like, I don't want to be anything like this. And I've seen it in college, I've seen it in industry. It is something that is natural to humans, but we're higher level thinkers. I think we could frankly kind of avoid those kind of petty things, and again, kind of straight towards more the impactful side. I think the last thing for me on this question is kind of to say like it's okay to explore what you want to do. I've been doing that so much. Like I've changed my perspective on things basically every like 6 months. I'm completely like, I wanted to do this, now I completely want to go at a right turn here. And you don't need to be coming into college knowing everything. You don't need to have a full plan set out. I definitely did not. Like I honestly learned so much from the people that came before me, and learning from them and learning from, again, my failures. And I think it's important to be able to be willing to have that uncertainty so that you could kind of find your best path and your best path in life.
Yeah, I agree. Sometimes I think that you don't need to have a plan, just something that drives you.
Yeah,
So
agreed,
I think
yeah.
that's important. Yeah.
I also didn't get into UF. But I like it here way better. Imagine living in an actual swamp.
Yeah, I mean,
Connect
I
me.
will say, like, quick tangent for the UCF kids. I mean, Gainesville's in the middle of nowhere. I'm going there this weekend for funsies, but like Orlando is like, there's so much more opportunity here. I think the upward potential of the school for its like, outside of the academia side is like exponential. I mean, there's so much that can happen in Orlando. It's a major city, but you're not even like drawn into necessarily the city. Like you have your own community here, and you have that. I mean, I think that's so valuable, and I really think I think I would have gone to UF, done a been a business major, and joined a frat, and then just become some like cookie cutter kid. I'm like. At the moment, I felt devastated that happened, but I'm very grateful that I ended up here and have been able to have such a cool impact. I mean, IEEE's really grown like so much since I've been here. It kind of goes in like a cyclical motion. Like there's times where it's very high up in membership and involvement, and then there's times where it kind of slopes down. And that was kind of what it was like when I came on and during the pandemic. Basically, everyone left at that point. And it's been really cool to see kind of like what it's become, and that people have been so interested in ambitious ideas and memes. So it's been cool to see that, and I'm very grateful for you guys also taking the reins, you too, Toby, and just kind of like where the future goes for it. I'm sure eventually it will kind of go into a slump at some point, but somebody else will come and then have it as an opportunity for them to make it their pet project.
Even during the pandemic, I was watching those Zoom GBMs and I was sitting like in bed and I was like, I really have to sit through this, but I did. And now we're here. So it's good. So one last thing.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Can you tell us about like your favorite IEEE memory? Could be tailgates. That's mine. It could be a project, workshops.
That's a really good question.
Just hanging out.
So many good memories, honestly. This has probably been one of the most impactful experiences of my life, honestly, at this point. It's been really cool to see what we've been able to do. A single instance, I mean, it's been cool to see even how much this podcast has grown. Like, it's gone in so many different directions and grown a lot from, I mean, Juan had, like, just shot it out as an idea at one point. So it's been cool to just see it evolve. And I think really the thing I'm most proud of is that we were able to do, a few in-person things during the pandemic, and we were able to grow from really like realistically at the point when I came in, it was like really 10 involved members to having like, at this point, like 200 to 300 people that are getting really good impacts and experiences that wasn't there before. That's something that I'm just very proud of. And I think I'm very grateful to have seen happen.
That's great. Well,
Yes, cool.
thank you so much for like talking to us today.
Yeah, pleasure.
Yeah, we had a great time.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here today.
All right, sick.